So Cook believed that if there was a continent beyond the sea ice, it was likely to be a frozen wasteland. But this didn't put off the Russian explorer and Navy officer, Thaddeus von Bellingshausen. Inspired by Cook's expedition, Bellingshausen led the ships Vostok and Marigny on an 1819 to 1821 voyage to Antarctica. His instruction was to approach as closely as possible to the South Pole, searching for an as yet unknown land and only abandoning the undertaking in the face of insurmountable obstacles. The main and very successful objective of this voyage was geographical exploration. They sighted the ice-covered Antarctic continent and the mountains of the West Antarctic Peninsula. They discovered Peter I Island, the first land sighted within the Antarctic Circle, and sailed through 42 degrees of longitude while inside the Antarctic Circle. That's nearly twice as far as Cook had managed. Today, the Russian Vostok station and Lake Vostok, which has the distinction of having the coldest naturally occurring temperature ever recorded on Earth, a staggering minus 89.2 degrees C, are named after Bellingshausen's ship, and the Russian base on King George Island in the South Shetlands is named after Bellingshausen himself. So American, British and Argentinian sealers were quick to respond to Cook's reports of the wildlife in Antarctic waters and the subantarctic islands. Places such as South Georgia and the South Shetlands were soon host to sealers, killing the seals for their fur and for oil from their blubber. This was bad news for the seals. In some locations their populations were almost wiped out in just a few hunting seasons, but it did lead to some scientific advances. James Weddell, for example, while on a sealing expedition of 1822 to 24, got as far as 74 degrees south in what we now know as the Weddell Sea. He also had a seal discovered on his voyage, named after him. The Weddell seals actually live right around the entire Antarctic continent, and the seals that we saw basking on the sea ice around Scott Base and McMurdo Sound are Weddell seals. Here at 77 degrees south, it's the farthest south they live, and this makes the Weddell seal the mammal with the most southerly distribution of any mammal. So the first recorded landing on the Antarctic continent took place in February 7, 1821 by American sealers in a place called Hughes Bay. By the 1830s, the fur seals were almost exterminated, and there was a bit of a lull in Antarctic travel. By about 1840 though, locating the South Magnetic Pole had become a key goal of scientific expeditions venturing south of the polar circle. There was a period in which Navy ships from the US, UK and France all headed south at about the same time, all competing, unsuccessfully, to be the first to reach the South Magnetic Pole. France's quest to reach the South Magnetic Pole was led by Captain Jules Dumont d'Urville in the Astrolabe. If the expedition could not reach the pole, their orders were to get further south than the record of 74 degrees 34 minutes achieved by James Weddell in 1823. Though the French expedition did not reach the South Magnetic Pole, they did make a good calculation of where it was and were more successful than the American expedition when it came to finding land. On 21 January 1840, they landed on one of a series of small islands in what is now known as Adélie Land, named after D'Urville's wife. The nearby coast they could see was inaccessible because of the ice, but they did manage to clamber onto a small islet, hurling penguins down to make way for them to climb, and unfurled the French flag and took possession of the territory for France. Then to celebrate, they opened and drank a fine bottle of Bordeaux. They collected whatever natural history specimens they could find. Penguins were the only life forms they could find, so they focused on rocks and took them back with them. Then Captain James Clark Ross, a Royal Navy captain who had already spent 15 summers and 8 winters in the Arctic, on one of which he'd located the North Magnetic Pole, led the British voyage of scientific discovery to Antarctica and the Southern Ocean. This new voyage of the ships Erebus and Terra was tasked with collecting botanical, zoological and geological samples and making meteorological and oceanographic observations. But the prime purpose of the voyage was magnetic research. As well as definitive charts of magnetic declination, dip and intensity for the southern hemisphere, they discovered the Ross Ice Shelf and found evidence of volcanism in Antarctica. The island Ross named Franklin Island is now known as Ross Island, and many of the significant landmarks of the island, including Mount Erebus, Mount Terra, Cape Bird and Cape Crozier, were named on this voyage. Mount Erebus, we now know, is the southernmost active volcano on Earth, and it's in a near constant state of low-level eruption. but it was in a particularly active phase when Ross passed it, as he recounts in his description. So now I'm going to read from Ross's book about his voyage. So this passage is from January 28, 1841. A volume of dense smoke was projected at each successive jet with great force in a vertical column to the height of between 1,500 and 2,000 feet above the mouth of the crater. When condensing first at its upper part, it descended in mist or snow and gradually dispersed, to be succeeded by another splendid exhibition of the same kind in about half an hour afterwards, although the intervals between the eruptions were by no means regular. The diameter of the columns of smoke was between 200 and 300 feet, as near as we could measure it. Whenever the smoke cleared away, the bright red flame that filled the mouth of the crater was clearly perceptible, and some of the officers believed they could see streams of lava pouring down its sides until lost beneath the snow which descended from a few hundred feet below the crater and projected its perpendicular icy cliffs several miles into the ocean. The New Zealand and US scientific bases, Scott Base and McMurdo Station, are now located about 35 kilometres southwest of Mount Erebus on Ross Island, and on a clear day you can usually see a bit of a puff of smoke coming out from the top of the volcano. So from these early voyages there came evidence of the existence of a large polar landmass. There was new information about the constant easterly winds. There was a theory that the tabular bergs found in Antarctic waters were pieces broken off a large ice shelf. Information was also gathered about ice, ocean currents, winds and atmospheric pressure. Many of the larger plants and animals were described. But it was also realised that although there was land here, it wasn't suitable for colonisation. And now that the seals were gone, it didn't really offer any commercial prospects. During the first international polar year, from 1881 to 84, there were 2 expeditions to the Antarctic, a German expedition to South Georgia and a French expedition to Cape Horn area of South Africa. But the next time Antarctica was a real focus for attention was in the early years of the 20th century. One group newly interested in Antarctica was the whalers, who, now that the Northern Hemisphere whales were becoming scarce, headed to Antarctica with their fast boats and explosive harpoons to hunt the Southern Hemisphere whales almost to extinction.